Coming
So
up on
it
today's
sounds like
episode.
there's a reason why STEM or science, technology, education, or education, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics has become an acronym, right? Because all of those things have always existed, but
Yeah.
because it is so intertwined that they're no longer these siloed disciplines.
The things that we do in our classes tie in directly to your science and your math classes. Like I'll teach my students about thermodynamics, and then, a few weeks later they're like, "Oh, we're doing thermodynamics and physics." And I'm like, "Oh, cool. So you got a little base of knowledge already for it." It was easy back in the day to take things for what they were. Be like, "Well, this is science. Okay, I'm probably not going to use that again. This is math. I'll maybe use some of it." Well, it's not really that way anymore.
Hey, welcome to the You Ask, the Pros Answer podcast. Your questions answered by the pros you trust. My name is Cole. I'm one of the hosts on the show. And this week we are talking STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. I'm excited for this episode. I had a chance to have a conversation with one of my best friends in the world, Casey Lowe. Casey is a high school engineering teacher at a public school in Baltimore County, Maryland. He is a husband. He is a father to 3 awesome kiddos. And he and I have been friends since the 7th grade. He has a wealth of knowledge. He's a super cool dude. And he and I had a conversation about how the STEM skills learned at the high school level translate to real world applications, whether that's in a remodeling career or really any path that the student chooses for his or her future. I'm excited for you to hear this one. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Casey Lowe. This is the You Ask, the Pros Answer podcast. Do you have questions about an upcoming exterior contracting project? We've got answers. Welcome to the You Ask, the Pros Answer podcast. All right. Hey, Casey, thanks for joining us today. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So we're recording this on a Thursday evening. You and I are both Oriole fans, and last I checked, the O's were actually winning a game, which is kind of fun to see.
Absolutely.
All right. So, Casey, you and I have known each other for a long, long time, but our audience doesn't really know much about you yet. So I thought we would start out by getting to know Casey Lowe. So to start, could you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background?
Well,
maybe what inspired you to become an engineering teacher?
Yes. So I attended high school with you, of course. And coming out of high school, I actually wanted to go into becoming like a writer for a newspaper, that sort of thing. So I had English aspirations. And then I went to college here in Maryland and took some English courses and things and wrote for the college newspaper. But as I was exiting college, all the newspapers were closing down, so that wasn't really a viable option. And I kind of fell into doing some substitute teaching and then some actual teaching. I filled in for a tech ed teacher that did not come back and ended up getting his position. Contrary to maybe popular belief, I don't know. But there are not a lot of people that go to school specifically to teach tech ed or engineering. Most of those people actually go and do it, which would probably be better for me. But no, I took over an engineering class and then got my certification and everything else and took the praxis exam, which is what you need to take for your content area, and did that. And then have been teaching engineering and tech eds for 16 years at the same school in Baltimore County.
16 years?
Yeah.
I can't believe it's been that long already. Real quick, for our younger audience members, could you briefly share what a newspaper is?
Ooh, newspaper was this fun thing that would be tossed up on your driveway or maybe even up to your porch, depending on the arm that your delivery boy had. And then you would open it up, and it had all the news from the previous day. It was pretty informative stuff. It was before we had the old phone to peruse and get our information from. My favorite, of course, was the sports section. And honestly, some of the best writing was in the newspaper, if you really go back and look at some of the stories.
Yeah, so the newspaper was so big at one point that we actually played a Nintendo game based on a newspaper boy. Remember that game, Paperboy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where you would basically ride a bicycle down the street and you'd get points for throwing digital papers onto people's doorsteps.
So real.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you've been teaching for 16 years, Baltimore County Public Schools. What subjects or areas of engineering do you primarily focus on in the classes that you teach now?
So currently I teach a program called Project Lead the Way. It is throughout the country and elsewhere. So our school adopted it probably in 2009 or 2010 we started it. And since then it's grown and we have several courses that fall under that. So we're Project Lead the Way Engineering tract is what we have. There's also a biomedical one, and I think there's one other one, but we have the engineering one. So I teach the introductory course, which is called Introduction to Engineering Design, which is a lot of 9th and 10th graders. And then I also teach another course called Principles of Engineering, which is one where we dig deeper into why and how behind engineering. Like, how do we prevent heat from transferring through these walls? How do we calculate that sort of stuff? And then we do some coding and some robotics and building some stuff. And then I also teach a senior level course, which is called Engineering Design and Development, which is a culmination of all of it, where the students basically pick a real world problem that they care about, and then they spend the year talking to experts and designing a solution to that problem, which they then prototype and test and get the data from, and then present at the end of the year on their results. And there have been some groups that have gotten patents on ideas, none that I've unfortunately had, but it has happened throughout the country with the class and stuff. So those are the three that I teach now. I have taught a civil engineering course before, and yeah, I've even taught an HVAC class one year.
I don't know why I was smirking at that. I've been rewatching Community on Peacock, and I was just thinking about Troy being. Did you watch Community?
I did, yeah.
Yeah.
It was good up until like season 4.
Yeah, it went a bit off the rails towards
Weird.
the end. But Troy was constantly being recruited by the HVAC.
Yes, the HVAC
department?
program. They wanted him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Casey, I know, especially through the COVID years, teaching is never easy. I'll acknowledge that. I was once a student. I haven't been a teacher, but I know teaching's never easy. But I know the COVID years just exponentially made it more difficult. Now, a few years removed from that event, what are some of the things that you enjoy most about teaching high school students? And then what do you enjoy most about teaching them specifically engineering and technology? Like, what is it that gets you up in the morning besides your alarm and your children and your dog?
Yeah, all those. And mind you, I do have an alarm clock. I don't use my phone. I'm old school like that. But besides that, teaching wise, the thing that continually drives me, or the thing that I enjoy the most about teaching, is not necessarily what's being taught, or certainly not grading. That is not one of the things, but just interactions with students and kind of watching them find their way. And then occasionally you'll have that moment where one of them gets it. And that's always a cool thing to see, where they're like, oh, okay, I get it now. And so those moments are cool. And then just the attitudes and the personalities of students. Like I recently had a birthday, and one of my students, she made a flag of me and another student and put it onto the American flag, I guess, but it was pink, and it's just a big picture of us on this giant flag. I'm not sure what I'm gonna do with it, but things like that are kind of interesting and different, and it's cool to come across a variety of kids. So I'd say that just the daily actually being in the classroom is the best part. Teaching.
Cool. Yeah, the flag seems like a creative thing, but I'm sure it's nice to know that your students were thinking about you. I mean, that's just indicative, I'm sure, of the way that they respect you. And yeah, that probably goes way farther than what you could ever teach them from a curriculum.
Yeah, she spent $10 on that, so that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, yeah. All right. In your experience, what are some of the common misconceptions that students might have about engineering or the skilled trades? So I don't know how much you talk about. I mean, you mentioned the real world applications, with some of the projects that they get to do, but obviously as a high school student, I'm sure you remember our worldview was pretty narrow at that point. It was hard to think beyond senior year, think beyond yourself and your family and your friends. But what are some of the common misconceptions that maybe you've heard over the years with regards to engineering or the trades themselves?
Yeah, so teaching in the subject that I teach, it has certainly changed pretty significantly since I started. When I first began teaching, it was very much a shop class still,
Mm,
where we would do project after project, and it would be like, we're going to build a bridge today. And then we'd get some balsa wood out and we'd build bridges and test them out. And I really do enjoy projects. Like, I wish that we still did more hands-on projects in some of the stuff that I'm teaching. But it was a lot of that. And it was really great then for the students to learn how to use machinery and to do things hands-on. And we still got the design aspect of it to a degree, where they got to design it, sketched out, and then actually make it and everything. But it has transitioned more into engineering. And in terms of that, we're doing a lot more 3D CAD modeling, more robotics sort of aspects to it, and certainly more in-depth math for some of the more advanced courses. So it's changed in that way. I used to have back to school night, and I would start out by sort of clearing up those misconceptions that parents might have, where they'd be like, I know that you guys probably think that tech ed is just banging a hammer against a piece of wood. That's it. Well, we're more than that here. But now I don't even have to do that, because they know that it's engineering, that we'll be doing a lot of design parts of it and everything. So it has changed a bit, but there's kind of misconceptions. And then for the students themselves, I think some of them, depending on what subject specifically they're in, they either think it's going to be really easy. Like for our HVAC program that we have at our school, they will typically put some students in that class, the guidance counselors, that is, that are lower performing in other classes. And they'll be like, well, you can take this and just get some hands-on stuff. And it is a lot more than just, going into the shop and using a hammer. They have to learn all the cooling process that goes through it, and the processors, and they do a lot with the sheet metal. So they got to learn how to make like a Pittsburgh lock seam and all these other things, which are hands-on, but it requires some real learning.
yeah.
But the opportunity for them is pretty great as well when they go into that program.
Yeah. And we just had, I didn't tell you this earlier. We moved into we moved into our new house about 10 months ago. We've had to have the HVAC company come out probably 5 times in the last 10 months. And this is a brand new house, brand new HVAC system. the tech that comes out is great. He's really knowledgeable, personable. Um, I don't know if they just installed a lemon or what, but anyway, the guy showed up today, and uh, just to your point that it's more than just. I think people have historically had a lower view of the trades until you get into it and realize just how technical it is. Plus, you have to have a personality. You can't just be showing up at somebody's house and be a jerk to them, you know. But he shows up with a multimeter, and he's got gauges. He's checking pressures and temperatures, and I'm like, man, you're like a mad scientist who drives around in a van all day, and he couldn't fix the problem, so that was a bummer. But he was
Yeah.
really nice about it, at
Yeah.
least.
That's the thing. Everybody wants to have that great high paying job, which I'm not saying that trades aren't. You can certainly make a great living in all of them, but they kind of look at those other things as well. I'll just get somebody to go do it. But everybody wants to have that friend who's like the electrician. Oh, Marty, can you come on over and take a look? These lights are not working for me. Or just the other day, I had a friend whose son does, he works on lawn and farming equipment. So he's really knowledgeable about all the engines that are in different lawnmowers and everything. And he came over, and my lawnmower had not worked for a year. I'd been borrowing the neighbors. And he took an engine out of an old mower that was sitting behind my shed and spruced it up. He took it out. He checked it out and everything. And he had it on my new mower in like 40 minutes, and it was running. And I was like, good golly, you're the man. So having people like that is really what drives, our society, and being able to continue to have the things that we want. And
Yeah.
Coincidentally, our HVAC system, our air conditioning system, is also not working currently. So they're important people to have.
Yep. Have you? All right. Let me back up a little bit. So when you and I were in high school, I remember there was always a huge emphasis on math. Like, how far along can you get in math by time you graduate? We also had a pretty good engineering program at our high school too, I remember. But it seemed like our counselors were always pushing college, like for 95% of the students. And I had a great college experience. It was valuable education. But I've seen it where students are pushed to go to school who they just aren't made for traditional academic learning. And a trade, we've talked on previous episodes about just how good of a living you can make in a skilled trade. Have you seen much of a tide shift in your years of teaching where whether school counselors or teachers or maybe yourself have changed that perspective of college doesn't have to be the end goal for every single student coming through?
So
Or is it still pretty? Go ahead.
for our school, we are probably one of the higher achieving schools in our county. We're usually pretty far up there in like AP scores. So, yes, good or bad, that is a pretty big emphasis for a lot of our teachers, is making sure that kids are prepared for AP tests and getting college credit before they leave school, and then getting into good colleges. And the college acceptance period is just kind of passed, and so we have a board that's usually put up near the office where it's like, these are where all of our kids are going to college. And that's all great and very exciting, and college experience has its own merits and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But just circling back to the HVAC program that we have, at least for our department specifically, we try our best to get the word out that there are, in fact, other opportunities out there. And with our program down there, it is structured in a way that students who take it is a completer program. So they take HVAC 1 and 2 simultaneously, and then they take 3 and 4, and then they take a welding class as like seniors.
Hmm.
And if they go through the whole program, many of them have found themselves in an apprenticeship during their senior year. And I can't really count the number of students that have come back after they've graduated and they've been working for a company right out of high school. And they've been working there for a year or two. They have a company truck,
Hmm.
they got housing and everything. And they're basically living an independent life at
Yeah.
20. And that's really cool to see that we've got that type of opportunity for students that school really wasn't their thing. The
Yeah.
ones that they put in there where it's like, well, I'm not real good at science and social studies is boring, but I like to do things with my hands. And then they
Yep.
come down into the HVAC shop and suddenly they're putting together ventilation systems and getting certified, their OSHA certification, and ready to go right out of high school.
Yeah. That's pretty cool. So, speaking of hands-on learning, and you touched on this already a little bit, but wondering if you could go back and share some of the specific projects that you have found particularly engaging for students that are hands-on. I know you mentioned the one that they get to do towards the end of the year, but could you just expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, so the one for the senior level class, the capstone course, those are cool to see. But like I said, with the PLTW, there's not as much hands-on construction as there is design and like thought into things.
Mm-hmm.
Like learning how things work and all is more of the process through the PLTW program. So I do wish there was more hands-on projects as a possibility in that. But with the senior level class, it is cool to see them actually bring to fruition their ideas and actually be able to test them out. And some of the students are very impressive with their knowledge and their getting after it. I currently have a group that is trying to make a generator, like a small generator for emergency backup in crisis situations like tornadoes and hurricanes and things.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some out there on the market, but they're trying to make a more accessible, portable one. And they've designed their own 3D model printout for their battery pack, and they're running the circuits and everything right now. So it is cool to see that. From the past, a project that I really like to do each year was something called a mousetrap car, which is basically constructing a vehicle out of wood primarily and like old CDs, which for your younger listeners, CDs were the ways that we listened to music back in the good old days. You used to pop it into your CD player. I remember when I got my first CD player in my car. That was cool.
I still have a CD player in my car. I'm pretty sure you do too, don't you?
I do, yeah, actually.
Yeah.
I've worn out my mixed CDs from high school. They're a little scratched up.
The burned ones, the
Yeah,
CDRs.
yeah, they were good. Anyway, so a lot of those are not used anymore, so we use those as the wheels for the mousetrap car. But the whole idea is that it's powered solely by a mousetrap. So you pull it back, you have string that's wrapped to it, and then it goes around the back axle, and then as the mousetrap, springs and closes, it's pulling the string off the back axle. And that was always a fun project because some students would really, really get into it, and they'd get it to go 85, 90 feet down the hallway. Mm. So, yeah, projects like that have always been fun.
Could you talk a little bit about the robotics team that you have coached and led over the last number of years?
Yeah, so we have a couple of robotics programs at our school. One is VEX Robotics, which is pretty widespread throughout the country. I think that's probably the program that most people would think of when they think of high school and middle school robotics. And that one's kind of standardized with the size that the robots have to be. They're a little bit smaller. And the gameplay, I guess, would be kind of similar. You work in teams of 3, I think it is, in an alliance. And then there's tasks that you have to accomplish, like picking up game pieces and putting them in certain spots. And we have a really good VEX robotics program. We had 3 teams from our school qualify for the Worlds, so they'll be going to Dallas the week after next to compete. And then we have another one called First Robotics, which is more international, perhaps. There are teams in Israel and Mexico and Canada and like Argentina and stuff. So it's throughout the world, but this one is a larger robot and there's more design variability. You can use kind of whatever materials you can find or decide to use. I've seen some that have stools as part of it, or actual vacuums, like to pick up things and stuff. So it gets a little weird, but you cannot use the same stuff most years. It's a mixture of things, but the game changes each year. You work with 2 other teams similar to Vex, but the gameplay is a little bit bigger in scale. And there's an opportunity to earn extra points if you can get a robot to lift itself off the ground at the end of the game. It's cool to see and to watch. And some of our students really, they go deep into it. Like they've created some pretty impressive robots as they've gone to the World's competition the last 3 years. They just came back about a week ago from Houston, where they competed. So they do a really good job. But this is a lot different than like you and I had in high school, where I don't know if you remember Mr. McIntyre's class. And we were at the infancy, I guess, of high school robotics, where he had us program this little robot that was about the size of a graham cracker. And it had that little white ball wheel, and you were supposed to put in these series of numbers or something like that, and then it would literally move like 6 inches forward and then turn like 14 degrees, and you were like, we did it. And that was the end of it. And I think that's probably why I never got into robotics. But this, it can move autonomously at the beginning of the game, and then they control it manually for the remainder of the game. So it's a lot better and cooler to watch than what we did.
Yeah. So, you know this. My son Gabe was part of the robotics team at his elementary school, and in fact, for our local Sussex County audience, there is a team from H.O. Brittingham that's heading to the Worlds in Dallas coming up here soon. Pro Exteriors was actually able to partner with them and help sponsor their trip down there. So Aaron, who is often on the show, got a chance to meet some of those students. He got to learn from some of those students. It's pretty incredible the stuff that they're doing at 9, 10, 11 years old. Casey, we have this piece of equipment that we use. People often think that roofing companies, you walk up to a house with like a hammer and a tool belt and some nails and shingles and stuff. But we have this machine called the Equipter. That's have you seen it before?
Do you know? So.
It's essentially a dump trailer that you can tow behind your truck. But then when you get it to the job site, you unhitch it from the truck. It has its own generator on board, and you stand behind it and you can steer it around the job site. And it has a lift on it, so it can go from the ground level all the way up to roof level. And it has these doors that swing out. So as you're demoing the roof, you can put all the shingles and all the underlayment straight into it, and then close it up, drop it down, hitch it back up to the truck at the end of the day, and take it to the dumpster. It was actually designed by an Amish company in Pennsylvania. Nice. Anyway, I just mentioned that because technology is making its way into industries that historically were very much like rough and dirty. It's still dirty and tough, but it's becoming more and more reliant on technology. All right. So speaking of the early robots that you did in engineering class, I took architecture in high school. I remember it was a big deal when we got a classroom full of Dell computers,
Mhm.
And I forget what the software was, but we were actually able to design houses. Like we designed the floor plan and then we could get 3D renderings of it. It was pretty advanced for its time. Uh, but how do your classes address the growing importance of technology and innovation in fields like construction and remodeling? You already mentioned a little bit about how 16 years ago when you started, it was very much like, here's the list of projects we're going to complete during the year. It was very like a tactile thing, and now it's much more computer based. But is there any other way that you've seen technology and innovation uh, creep into what you're teaching? And then, in a practical standpoint, I know you're not out in the field building homes, but have you seen growth in the importance of technology?
So for us in school and with the engineering program, we are doing a ton of 3D modeling. So that's the biggest integration of technology for us, is just that design aspect and being able to see something before we actually construct it and get a full sense of it. And I mean, you see it all over television too. Uh, as an older gentleman with a wife that is still young, but around the same age as me, um, we watch HGTV and Dream, like many people probably do.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, in those shows, it's always about like, what's it going to look like? And they always do the quick 3D modeling of it. And they're like, we're going to wipe out these cabinets and replace them with this. You're like, ooh, that's going to look nice. So being able to actually teach students how to do that and see their vision before going through the process of actually constructing it as being your only option is pretty cool. In fact, this year we are trying to get all of our students Autodesk Inventor certified, so
Mm.
that they can be certified in that if they choose to continue with engineering outside of college and everything. They'll have those skills to actually do that. And then we have Autodesk Revit for our civil engineering program, which goes into pretty good depth in terms of the structures and all the systems that would be inside of that, like electrical and plumbing and everything. Um, so certainly a lot of technology and innovation in that sense. And then I think to your other question about remodeling and having those skills for that, I guess is kind of what you're asking, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think for some students, because not all my students love engineering, sadly to
Sure.
say. Some of them are like, well, I'm not going to need this. I don't want to do engineering. I'm not going to build anything. And so I try to get them to understand that the skills that we learn will serve you in whatever you do. And for remodeling, just the knowledge of being able to find surface area. How much material do I need to cover this? Or being able to accurately measure, which is one of the things that we start the year with, is just going over measurement. And it is surprising that a lot of students just don't quite understand what a fraction of an inch would be. They're like, it's zero point 0.2 inches. I'm like, you mean 1/8 of an inch? Because it's the second mark there. So learning those things, albeit they might not understand at the time and be like, well, I don't need to know this. It's like, yeah, I think some point in your life you're going to want to be able to measure the height of a wall to
Yeah.
figure out how much paint you need or something. So those are all skills that I try to make sure that they understand are going to benefit them, even if they don't want to become engineers or anything like.
Yeah. Yeah. I'll say we use a software called Hover, where if we have a customer call in and they want their roof replaced or their siding done or even windows, we can order. Well, Hover is an application where we can either have the homeowner or one of our exterior specialists can go out to the house, take a series of photos with his or her iPhone based on what the app is asking them to take, and it'll actually build a 3D rendering of their home pretty quickly with all the dimensions, and it's very accurate. But you better believe that before we order any materials, we're double checking to make sure that the measurements are accurate, because it makes a big difference if something's out of whack. So, just like my kids will say, well, why do I need to know how to do math if I have a calculator on my phone and I have a calculator on my watch? Well, hey, sometimes you don't even know what to type into the calculator. It's these simple life skills that are foundational regardless of where you end up. Um,
Yes. Yeah. Even
anyhow,
just using the tools that we have is a skill in and of itself.
yeah,
Like currently,
yep,
we're doing force vectors in one of my classes, and we have to use trigonometry. And if a student doesn't understand how to put it into the calculator to get an actual answer from cosine of 30, then we're lost. We can't do it.
yeah.
So just being able to understand how to use the tools that we have is a skill.
All right, two more quick questions, and then I shall let you go. Are there opportunities for your students to learn about or interact with professionals in the building and remodeling trades? So, do you ever have guest speakers? Are there ever site visits? You mentioned the internship with the HVAC program, but is there any other, cross pollinating is probably not the right word, but like interaction between the real world and your classroom? I just want to get a gauge on how well the real world industries are connecting with the education system, or is it pretty compartmentalized?
So before COVID, we had a board. I wouldn't say an advisory board, but sort of a community um, partnership board, I guess. It was different companies throughout our community, different engineering companies, modeling companies, whatever it would be. We had reached out and created sort of a network from which a lot of them would sort of come and seek out future employees
Mm-hmm.
from the programs that we had. And unfortunately, since COVID and everything, that has not been a regular thing for us each year. It's kind of gone by the wayside, unfortunately. But
Okay.
that was our biggest reaching out and partnering with some of the community companies that we have around us.
All right. So, lastly, you have a captive audience right now. If you could dream up any idea, how can the remodeling industry better connect with and support STEM education programs in high schools? So, would it be setting up that cohort of local businesses and design firms and partnering with the school? Is it something bigger that you envision? Have you even thought about it? Is this a new question for you? What say you, sir?
I say having a relationship with some of the companies in the area, whether remodeling or otherwise, is something that I think would be very beneficial for us, uh, especially if it can garner experiences that the students might not be able to otherwise have.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that our department did a couple years ago, and this was through the county itself, we were able to secure a sea container, one of those big ones that you see on ships,
Yeah.
and it was placed outside of our school building. And over the course of about a year and a half, our HVAC program, kind of in coordination with our engineering program, were able to design a tiny home to build inside of it. So they cut open the doorways, put in a sliding door on one side, some two standard doors on the other one. They put in the air conditioning, the frame on the inside, the drywall, the flooring. Um, even built some furniture to go in there. So opportunities like that where students can collaborate with each other within the school, but also have the materials to construct something and make something of their own, I think is pretty impactful for anybody that walks past and is like, what is that? And then, you got your into your program for other students.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're doing something at scale as opposed to some like a super tiny model of something, it's something tangible.
Model only has so much impact where you're like, I built a tiny house. Cool.
Yeah.
As opposed to I can walk in it and now I can actually have a meeting in here or whatever.
Yeah. So to the portion of our audience that is a contractor or design firm or architecture company, whatever, if you're looking for ways to get involved in your local community, go to your local high school and talk with the team there and find out if there's ways you can partner. Well, Casey, on behalf of the entire world, thank you so much for teaching and for caring about your students the way that I know that you do. Thank you also for being on here, taking time out. So Casey's married. He has 3 young kids. He has retreated to his basement, the kids' playroom, to do this. So I appreciate you taking time to do it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about what we do.
All right, that is all we have for you today on the You Ask the Pros Answer podcast. Hey, would you please help us get the word out about the show? The best way to do this is to leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, follow us on social media, or simply tell a friend. Also, if you are watching on YouTube, would you please like this video and subscribe to the channel? Before we go, we want to hear from you. What are some questions that you have related to exterior home remodeling, the process involved, the options that are out there? Would you please send your questions to info@askproexteriors.com and simply put "You Ask" in the subject. If you are facing an upcoming home project, we hope that this weekly show has empowered you to tackle it with confidence. Remember, knowledge is power, and a little bit of research can go a long way. Until next time, happy home owning. The You Ask the Pros Answer podcast is produced in-house by the Pro Exteriors team. Pro Exteriors is the exterior contracting division of Empire Construction Group, LLC. This podcast is intended for informational purposes only and should not be considered legal advice. For more answers to your questions, please subscribe to this channel and podcast so you'll never miss an episode. Do you have an upcoming home remodeling project? Find more answers to your questions at askproexteriors.com.